Olivia and Daniel looked like the perfect couple, wealthy, glamorous, and admired by everyone who knew them. But behind the polished smiles and luxury lifestyle, a dark truth was waiting to surface. Daniel's love for his wife was genuine, yet Olivia's love was for his fortune, not for him. On a cliffside trip that was supposed to be a romantic adventure, Olivia saw her chance to claim everything she desired. With a single shove, she sent Daniel plunging toward what she thought was his death. But the story didn't end there. Against all odds, Daniel survived, and his survival exposed the shocking betrayal that turned a beautiful marriage into a chilling tale of greed, deception, and justice. Daniel and Olivia were often described as the perfect couple, admired by everyone who saw them together. Daniel was in his late 40s, a successful businessman who had spent years building his fortune through smart investments and real estate ventures. He had grown from humble beginnings into a man of influence, respected for his sharp mind and determination. Olivia, a woman 10 years younger, brought beauty, elegance, and charm into his life. She carried herself with confidence, and her smile made her seem warm and approachable. When the two were together, they looked like they belonged in glossy magazines, a pair meant for luxury and admiration. Their relationship appeared effortless from the outside, filled with romantic getaways, candlelit dinners, and moments that others envied. Friends often called them inseparable, describing them as the type of couple people dreamed of becoming. They lived in a grand home with expensive cars parked in the driveway and closets lined with designer clothes. To neighbors and acquaintances, their life seemed like a fairy tale, untouched by problems or stress. Olivia appeared devoted, always by Daniel's side at business parties and social events. Daniel, on his part, showered her with gifts and spoke of her with pride, convinced he had found true love. Yet perfection can often hide fractures too small for others to notice. Behind the walls of their lavish home, subtle signs of imbalance were slowly taking shape. Daniel's trust in Olivia was complete, but her admiration for him was not as pure as it seemed. While he saw a future filled with partnership and love, Olivia's gaze lingered more on the wealth that surrounded them than on the man who had earned it. The seeds of something darker were already beginning to take root. Daniel had no idea that the woman he adored was quietly growing restless. Olivia loved the lifestyle that came with being his wife, but she did not love the man who made it possible. The money, the parties, the attention, these were the things that excited her. In private moments, when Daniel was away at work, she would picture herself as the sole owner of his fortune. She enjoyed the power of wealth, but hated that she had to share it. Every shopping spree and luxury trip felt less like joy and more like a taste of what she could truly have if she were on her own. Daniel trusted her completely, never questioning her motives. He believed her affection was genuine, blind to the subtle coldness in her heart. Olivia, however, had grown skilled at hiding her thoughts. She played the role of the devoted wife, smiling at his side and speaking words of encouragement, while secretly counting the days until she no longer needed him. The idea of waiting for inheritance was too slow, and divorce meant splitting the fortune she longed to control entirely. Her desire for independence twisted into something darker. Olivia began to see Daniel not as her partner, but as her obstacle. She studied him in silence, memorizing his routines, his hobbies, his favorite places. It was during one of these observations that an idea took root. If Daniel's life ended suddenly, she would not only be free, but also wealthier than she had ever imagined. To Olivia, the thought no longer seemed shocking, it seemed like a solution. What began as daydreams of indulgence had transformed into dangerous planning, and in her heart, she was already preparing for the moment to strike. Daniel's love for the outdoors often led him to plan spontaneous trips. Hiking, fishing, and exploring hidden spots gave him peace away from the stress of business. Olivia pretended to share his enthusiasm, even though she had little interest in nature. When Daniel suggested visiting a scenic cliffside known for its breathtaking views, she smiled and agreed. For him, it was another adventure. For her, It was the opportunity she had been waiting for. The cliff was remote, surrounded by rugged terrain and silence broken only by the wind. Few visitors came there, and those who did rarely stayed long. The rocky edges dropped sharply into the valley below, creating the kind of setting where one wrong step could be fatal. To Daniel, it was beauty. To Olivia, it was perfection. She had imagined many possible ways to rid herself of him, but none seemed as natural as this. An accidental fall would raise no suspicion, and she would be seen only as the grieving wife left behind. As the trip approached, Olivia carefully masked her anticipation. She helped pack their bags, chose the perfect outfit, and even planned a picnic to make the day look ordinary. Daniel was thrilled to share the outing, touched that his wife showed such interest in his favorite pastime. He had no idea he was walking into the place where her darkest intentions would come to life. The morning they set out, the sky was clear and the sun bright, the kind of day that promised peace and joy. Daniel drove with excitement, while Olivia sat quietly, her mind focused on the cliff ahead. Every mile that passed brought her closer to the moment she believed would change everything forever. The climb to the cliffside was steady, the air crisp and clear. Daniel admired the vast horizon, pointing out the colors of the sky and the endless stretch of land below. His voice carried excitement, but Olivia's attention was elsewhere. Her eyes scanned the rocky edge, the sharp drop that disappeared into shadows. The place was exactly as she had imagined, remote, dangerous, and unforgiving. Every detail confirmed her belief that this would be the perfect stage for her plan. Daniel stood near the edge, soaking in the beauty of the view. He felt calm, unaware that the woman standing behind him carried a storm of intentions. Olivia's heart raced, her palms damp, but her thoughts were steady. For weeks, she had rehearsed this moment in her mind. Now it was real. All she needed was a single action, and the fortune she desired would be hers. Without warning, she stepped forward and shoved him hard. Daniel's body lurched forward, his arms flailing as the ground beneath him vanished. The sound of his scream was swallowed by the wind as he plunged toward the jagged rocks below. Olivia froze, her chest rising and falling rapidly, waiting for silence to confirm the end. When the echo faded, she carefully leaned over, her eyes searching the valley. She expected stillness, expected finality. Instead, she saw movement, small, faint, but undeniable. Daniel's body was battered and twisted, yet he clung to life, his chest rising with shallow breaths. Olivia's stomach tightened with dread, but she forced herself to turn away. She told herself it was only a matter of time. No one could survive such a fall for long. With each step back towards safety, she convinced herself she had done enough. In her mind, Daniel was as good as gone. Olivia hurried back down the trail, forcing herself to appear frantic and shaken. By the time she reached her car, she had already rehearsed the story she would tell. Within hours, she contacted the authorities, her voice trembling as she reported that Daniel had slipped while admiring the view. She painted the scene as a tragic accident, her words laced with convincing grief. To the rescuers who rushed to the site, her performance seemed genuine. Few questioned the distraught wife whose husband had supposedly fallen to his death. Days passed, and Olivia played her role with perfection. She cried in front of neighbors, clutched tissues during police interviews, and even spoke of Daniel's love for adventure as if his passion had led to his own demise. Sympathy poured in from friends and acquaintances. People brought her food, flowers, and words of comfort. They called her brave for surviving such heartbreak. Behind closed doors, Olivia celebrated quietly. To her, the plan had worked, and the wealth she longed for was finally within reach. She wasted no time preparing for her new life. Olivia met with lawyers, spoke with insurance companies, and began taking steps to claim Daniel's estate. She studied bank accounts and assets, carefully planning how she would enjoy her independence once the paperwork cleared. Every signature brought her closer to freedom, but the cover-up was not as flawless as she believed. Search teams continued scouring the area where Daniel had fallen, determined to recover a body. Olivia reassured herself that nothing would be found but broken remains. She had no idea that the man she had betrayed was clinging to life, waiting to shatter the illusion she had built so carefully. Her greatest secret was already slipping out of her control. Days after the fall, search teams combed through the rocky valley, expecting to recover only a body. What they found instead was something none of them could have imagined. Daniel was alive. He was battered, bruised, and barely conscious, but his chest rose with faint breaths. His survival was described as nothing short of a miracle. Rescuers carried him out carefully, stunned that anyone could have endured such a brutal drop. Word spread quickly, and soon the tragic accident was no longer viewed as so simple. Daniel was rushed to the hospital, where doctors worked tirelessly to stabilize him. Broken bones, deep cuts, and internal injuries left him fighting for his life. Yet even through the haze of pain and medication, his mind held on to one clear memory: the shove. He had felt Olivia's hands against his back, the force that sent him over the edge. The image of her calm face as he fell burned itself into his thoughts. He knew it had not been an accident. While Olivia accepted condolences and began arranging her future, she was unaware that Daniel was regaining strength. She imagined herself free, the wealthy widow stepping into the life she had always wanted. But each day, Daniel's voice grew stronger. Slowly, he began to speak to detectives and nurses, recounting the truth of what had happened on that cliff. The moment he confirmed her betrayal, everything changed. What Olivia believed was the end had become only the beginning. Her husband had returned, not only alive, but determined to expose her. The survival she never thought possible had rewritten the story, turning her perfect cover into a crumbling lie that could no longer protect her. The revelation of Daniel's survival sent shockwaves through the investigation. What had first been treated as a tragic accident now carried the heavy shadow of suspicion. Detectives revisited every detail of Olivia's account. Her tears, once seen as genuine, now appeared rehearsed. Her story about Daniel slipping didn't align with the injuries doctors described. The force of his fall suggested something more deliberate. Slowly, the image of a grieving widow began to unravel. Investigators dug deeper into Olivia's life. They uncovered her sudden attempts to access Daniel's accounts only days after the fall. Insurance claims had been filed with remarkable speed, raising questions about her priorities. Friends and neighbors whispered about her obsession with money and her habit of flaunting expensive purchases. To the detectives, it painted a picture of motive. Wealth was not just part of her life, it was her driving desire. Meanwhile, Daniel, still weak but determined, gave his statement from the hospital bed. His words were steady, despite the pain. He described standing at the edge, admiring the view, when he felt Olivia's push. He spoke of the shock, the betrayal, and the helplessness as the ground disappeared beneath him. His account matched the physical evidence in a way Olivia's version could not. With testimony from Daniel and growing evidence against her, Olivia's world began to collapse. The sympathy she had once enjoyed turned into suspicion. Detectives quietly built their case, knowing the truth was no longer hidden. Olivia, however, still clung to the belief that she could outsmart everyone. She smiled for cameras, maintained her innocence, and convinced herself she could explain it all away. What she didn't realize was that the walls around her were closing in, and escape was no longer possible. The case finally reached the courtroom, drawing crowds eager to witness the trial that had captured so much attention. Olivia entered wearing a polished smile, dressed carefully to appear composed and innocent. She carried herself with confidence, convinced she could charm the jury the same way she had fooled neighbors and friends. For her, this was simply another performance. She believed that without solid proof, no one could truly pin the crime on her. But her confidence began to crumble the moment Daniel appeared. Weak from his injuries, yet unbroken, he walked slowly into the room with the aid of crutches. Gasps filled the courtroom as people realized the man Olivia claimed was gone forever now stood ready to speak. His very presence contradicted her story. For Olivia, it was the nightmare she had hoped to bury. When Daniel took the stand, the room fell silent. He spoke with calm precision, recounting the moments on the cliff. He described how Olivia positioned herself behind him, the sudden force of her push, and the chilling awareness that his wife had chosen wealth over his life. His words were steady, each sentence cutting through the image Olivia had built for herself. The prosecution supported his testimony with evidence, financial records showing her rush to secure his fortune, inconsistencies in her statements, and the suspicious speed with which she filed insurance claims. Piece by piece, the puzzle was laid out, leaving little room for doubt. Olivia's mask slipped under the pressure. Her once calm demeanor gave way to nervous glances, clenched fists, and flashes of anger. The jury saw not a grieving widow, but a woman exposed. For the first time, Olivia realized the story was no longer hers to control. The truth had spoken, and it spoke louder than her lies. The verdict came swiftly. Olivia was found guilty of attempted murder, her carefully built world collapsing in an instant. The woman who once lived in luxury was sentenced to decades behind prison walls. The glamorous image she had so carefully crafted dissolved into the reality of orange uniforms and iron bars. No amount of charm or excuses could change her fate. She had gambled everything for money, and in the end, she lost more than she ever imagined. Daniel, though scarred for life, emerged as a symbol of resilience. His body bore the marks of the fall, and his spirit carried the weight of betrayal. Yet he chose to keep moving forward. The man who had once trusted blindly now understood the cost of misplaced love. Support poured in from those who admired his strength, calling his survival a miracle and his courage inspiring. For Olivia, prison was a cage of regret. She was left with nothing but memories of the fortune she never secured and the man she could not destroy. Every day behind bars reminded her of the choice that led her there, the moment on the cliff when she let greed control her hands. The story became more than just a criminal case. It was a cautionary tale, a chilling reminder of how ambition without limits can turn into destruction. Olivia's fall was not from a cliff, but from the life she had tried to steal. Daniel's survival proved that truth has a way of rising, no matter how deeply someone tries to bury it. In the end, justice was served, and the gold digger who thought she had gotten away with murder discovered that fate had written a very different ending.